I am curious to talk with Lewis on line 20.
Ooh, okay.
No, not that Lewis, the other Lewis.
Oh, okay. Then this Lewis, I'm going to pop back in the queue. Sorry, Lewis.
Sorry, there's more than one Lewis in the queue, but I specifically invited this Lewis to call in, so I wanted to make sure that we got to him. So, Lewis, hi.
Hey, V. How are you?
Doing good. I'm impressed you called in, man. What can we help you with today?
Hello.
Oh, not much. Well, hey, you and I were talking on Twitter, and I had kind of posted a little bit of an inflammatory comment that I do believe is that I think that to be an atheist, I think there has to be a fairly high level of ignorance when it comes to some significant philosophical ideas. And I think that often, my opinion is that atheism is a result of not being well read enough, which strikes a lot of atheists the wrong way, because people often think they're atheists because they're more intelligent or more well read.
I think that would strike anybody the wrong way. If I said theists are just all kind of dumb, that would be just as awful. And I don't believe that for a second. So I'm curious how you came to this conclusion, right? How did you determine that atheism was a result of this specific failing? Is it from speaking with other atheists? Were you an atheist yourself at some point? Walk me through this.
Yeah, so I definitely was I don't know if I would describe myself as an atheist necessarily, but a skeptic, someone that was not a believer when I was in college and that kind of thing. But, undergraduate was engineering, got a master's degree in theology/philosophy, also have another master's degree in business/economics. And just from all my reading and everything I've studied on this subject, I think the evidence is like overwhelming for there, A, being a God, and then B, Christianity being the best interpretation and understanding of that God.
Okay, well, let's start there then, because I cannot convince you that I am well-read enough sufficient to disprove that particular hypothesis. I think that generally we want to stay away from making those kinds of broader accusations. But if you think that you get it and you want to share, I'd be really interested to hear what evidence you've got that makes it so compelling.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. So, first of all, in my opinion, one of the things that atheists always talk about is that the burden of proof is on
the claimant,
or on Christians to suggest that, to prove that there is a God. I read out.
Hold on
the subject.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Lewis.
Sure.
Somebody with a degree in philosophy, you understand that the burden of proof lies on the claimant, correct?
No, I mean, not necessarily.
No?
I think, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware of what it means to be philosophically basic. Philosophically basic.
Yes.
So in other words, if I say, hey, I've got a tree in my backyard, and you say, well, you have to prove that for me to believe it, I would say, no, if you're going to doubt the tree,
sure,
then the burden of proof is actually on you to go out and show that that's a projection or something, right? So
you took him down this route.
In philosophy,
get him back on track.
In philosophy, certain things are philosophically basic.
So I think you mean properly basic is the way Plantinga described it, and properly basic.
Sure. Yeah.
The way I understand it is when we're talking about assumptions that don't need to be backed up. Right. So when you're making those assumptions, then okay, right? We're assuming a lot of things when we're having conversations because we're assuming that the other person is an honest interlocutor, and that when you
sure,
provide evidence, you're giving the best to your ability, correct? Cool.
Yeah, right.
If you are going to define something that we are disagreeing on, then it is obviously not properly basic, is it? If I were to come in with a presupposition that I'm right, and then use that presupposition to back up my claim, I've provided nothing. All I've done is a little dance, which is something that Plantinga likes doing.
Yeah, but right. So yeah, but hold on. So let's take something that is widely agreed on. Let's say sure, the Earth not being flat. So you got a round, you got a spherical Earth. Everybody agrees on that, except for flat earthers, right? So flat earthers then I would say the burden of proof is on them, right? Like,
because they are the claimants.
Okay, I'm saying the Earth is flat, so then like that. Well, they're no more claimants than we are, right? So we're saying the Earth is spherical. They're saying the Earth is flat. Both have a claim, but I would say the burden of proof should be on the people with the strange view, right? The people with the view
a couple notes here, Lewis, before we jump any further, because I'm noticing that we're going to start going down some trails that I don't want to go down. First, as atheists, for Eric and me at least, I don't know about the atheists you've been talking to online, we are not positive atheists, as in we do not say there is no God. We say we are not convinced that there is a God. So we are not making a positive claim like the Earth is round or the Earth is flat. It would be equivalent to saying the Earth is flat versus I'm not convinced the Earth is flat, without making a claim as to the size or the shape of the Earth. And also, second one, the attempt to classify the person who needs to claim the thing is the person making the stranger claim, to me sounds like a recipe for, ad populum, right? Like, okay, it is less familiar to me. Fewer people think it. Therefore, for some reason, they are the ones who need to back it up. I don't think that necessarily makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, but with that being said, when we say something is basic, when we acknowledge something is basic, it is to some degree ad populum, right? So it's to some, if we're going to say, I don't believe that we're butterflies dreaming we're humans, and you say, well, I think we are butterflies dreaming we're humans. Like, I would say there's a burden of proof that kind of falls on the person that's got the unique idea. Like, there is a certain degree to which we're all agreed on certain things. When someone's like, actually, everything that you guys have all agreed on, we disagree with. Like, I kind of feel like that person kind of has to be the one to show why they're right. Now, with that being said, if I thought you guys were atheists. It sounds like you're more agnostic than atheist, because when you don't, you're basically saying, hey, I just haven't seen good proof that there's a God. That's different than being an atheist in the sense that you do not believe there is a God.
Well, not necessarily. There's a difference, because I don't believe there's a God, because it hasn't been proven to me that there is one, and my default position is to not believe things until I have sufficient reason to believe them. So yes, I am an atheist because I do not believe in a God. I'm making no ontological claim about whether or not there is one. I'm just saying personally, I have not been convinced.
I actually disagree with you, V.
Interesting.
And I think you are also on my side about this, that depending on the claim, I do make the assertion that some gods don't exist.
That is accurate. So for the concept of a God in general, some higher intelligence, higher power, deistic, woo-woo,
nebulous.
Sure, maybe there's no falsifiable way to prove or disprove that. However, I can be positively atheistic about certain God claims. So certain gods that defy the laws of logic, or certain gods that evidence has borne out against them. Those gods I might be positively atheistic about.
Yeah.
So we're getting into all of this, and it sounds like we're breaking it down to the point where you think that God is a properly basic belief, and we're not convinced that that's the case, which suggests that it might not be properly basic.
Yeah, so I do believe that since most people have experienced God, like Gallup did a study, 82% of the population has said that they experienced God. I think that many people, something like 50% of the population has said that they have experienced a guardian angel, right? So like there's like large percentages of the population that had these experiences. And I think it's strange for atheists to say, we think all those experiences are in your head. We think all those experiences aren't real. Like there's a certain level of mass delusion. And I think
hold on.
That's the way madness lies, right?
No, it's just a misattribution of causation.
Right.
You can have and experience things that you don't understand. I think that it is clear that as humans, we jump to conclusions because we want answers to things, and nature abhors a vacuum. We abhor that vacuum. But the fact is saying I don't know is the honest answer. And so trying to fill in a space with supernatural claims, I think, is something that most people do.
Especially when they're in a culture that's saturated with language to describe those things. Of course, people are going to explain something as God or a guardian angel if that's the language they've been given to describe a particular event. We're not debating whether or not someone's had an experience or that that's what they attribute it to. We're debating whether or not those things are actually legitimate.
And for someone who wants to come in, you're giving ad populum.
Right.
And you're recognizing that's not popular.
Let's move off this for a minute there, because in order to falsify or validate rather a properly basic belief, you need a grounding, right? And there are different kinds of groundings. What is your grounding for believing that God is a properly basic belief?
So my grounding for believing that God is popular or is a basic belief is that I believe that it is an obviously true thing for most people. So in other words, in a personal case, no. When
how is that not ad populum? How is I believe it because most people do not an ad populum fallacy?
Yeah. Okay, well, let me explain. Yeah, let me explain why it's not ad populum. Ad populum would be I believe it because most people think it's true. That would be ad populum.
Okay.
But I believe it because most people have witnessed it in some way, and that witness can be visual or through an experience that they interpret, that I trust their interpretation.
Why do you trust these people?
That's like saying, so, yeah, but
What about
say
Joe Schmo down the street saying he saw a guardian angel makes you justifiably change your view of reality?
So when you say Joe Schmo, but what if you say someone that you trust and like and that's otherwise a trustworthy, someone that if they told you anything else, they have no interest to lie, they're someone you love and care about, someone that's otherwise intelligent, educated, and they say, I saw something, to just throw that out or to say that you can interpret it better than them
it sounds like,
and when it's...
Hey, Lewis, really quick, because you said a couple of things that I just wanted to really quickly jump in on. It sounds like you're carrying a lot of assumptions that we're not carrying. Whether or not someone is smart and honest does not matter at all.
Oh, no.
It does.
No, it
doesn't. Because, Lewis, we're not...
When someone witnesses something...
Lewis, hold on.
You would... All right, sure. Go ahead.
We're not calling them liars. I'm not calling you a liar. Right. It's misattribution of causation is what we're saying. We're not saying lying.
But by saying that, you're saying you can interpret my experience better than I can interpret my experience.
No, we're saying that you need to bring us evidence of your experience that will help us to interpret it in the way you want us to and convince us. You can't just bring us your experience and say, well, it's properly basic, therefore you're ignorant if you don't believe what I do.
No, well, I should say I have a multi-point thought on this. Obviously, very complicated. All this stuff can be, full books, right? But this is piece number one in my, and I always look at the belief in God as a collection of clues rather than proofs, right? So anyone taken by itself, sure, you could pick it apart, that kind of thing. But let's say there was a God, and that God was a personal God that interacted with people, and you have 82% of the population that says they've interacted with him, and many of those people are highly educated people, trustworthy people, and they say they've interacted with him. I think it's strange to say, no. Because of our previously held philosophical belief that there are no miracles, we're not going to believe your interpretation.
Wait. My previously held philosophical belief was that there were miracles and that God did exist and that there were guardian angels.
We were Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah, but... Sure, but right now you don't believe in miracles, so therefore when I say I've experienced this, your first thing, and you don't know me, so obviously I could be crazy, but let's say it's someone that you know, someone at your work, someone that would never lie, someone that you trust. When he gives a testimony or she gives a testimony of something they believe in, generally speaking, you believe them, right? So
I believe you experienced the thing, sure. I will not doubt that for a second. But you cannot say I experienced something, therefore ontological claim about the universe.
Example, Lewis, Well, sure. So an example would be when I got really into wanting to connect with the collective unconscious of the universe. And so I started doing shamanistic drugs, and I had out-of-body experiences while I was tripping on drugs. I can say, hey, I experienced flying. Mm-hmm. Now, I wouldn't expect you to deny my account of that experience, but you should be very skeptical about whether or not my account is corresponding to reality. And the way you would say that is, hey, were you messing with your brain chemistry? Is that a more likely explanation?
Sure. But Eric, I mean, like that by itself is almost kind of condescending, right? So that's, you agree that that was the drugs. I agree that it was the drugs. And therefore, that is in no way a parallel to something where I say, I know that I've encountered God through prayer, through personal spirit, kind of this, it's very hard to describe. But
so you're saying that your grounding for God is experience?
No, not at all. So what I've said this before is that I think what we're talking about here is this kind of idea of basic, and this idea that when almost everybody's experienced something and they're, you know, at least a good chunk of them are trustworthy people, smart people that for anything else you would believe them on. I think it's strange to say, we're not going to believe you on that, or we're going to reinterpret what you think you experienced as something else, even though, you know, you're...
Why is it unrealistic to ask somebody to provide enough evidence to convince me?
So again, right now, I'm just talking about philosophical basics. So I think there are positive arguments for God, but basically I'm starting off saying, I think that atheists often assume that the burden of proof lies on Christians. I don't think it does. But I do think there's positive, you know, with that being said, you know, like I say, I don't think I need to prove it. I think there are good proofs, right? So like, I think consciousness... You
didn't answer my question though, Lewis.
Yeah.
You seem like you are upset that I am not convinced by the evidence for God. Me, any other atheist, how could we not be convinced? Why is it unrealistic to expect that somebody making a claim that is so big, so huge in relation to my worldview that would absolutely shatter everything I believe now? Why on earth would you think that it's unreasonable for me to expect a level of evidence that I could buy into? That's all this is. I'm not making any positive claim. I'm not saying anything except for you have not convinced me.
Right. And what I am saying is not necessarily that my experience has to convince you, but that there is no default, the burden of proof lies on one side or the other. Obviously, if we disagree, it's to show me where I'm wrong and me to show you where you're wrong. But
right, defeaters and defeaters.
Question, yeah. But in the big picture philosophical question, I think Christians can very rationally go through life never providing any proof to themselves or anybody else what they believe. And I think that's...
Do you do that with anything else?
To do.
Anything else that impacts your life as much as your religion? Do you go through without questioning or providing evidence and call yourself rational? Is that a thing that you do?
Absolutely. There's things you have to do that on, right? So like there is no non-circular way to prove you're rational, for example. There's no...
Well, hold on. It depends on how you define rationality.
So rationality is the ability to work through problems in a rational way.
Okay, you're using the definition, the word in the definition.
Yeah, I can't use rational in the definition of rationality.
Okay, so the ability to think through problems in a way that makes sense.
To you, right? So
makes sense externally, internally?
Yeah, because you can have an internally consistent worldview that you live in, you're a brain in a vat that doesn't correspond to reality. So it's actually kind of useless. What if we defined rational as by whether or not there's sufficient evidence to warrant?
No, let's define rational as our brain works.
Our brain works?
I mean,
brain works. Yeah. So like when I think
flat earthers are rational.
Right. Yeah. But let's say I say 2 + 2 = 4, and all three of us think that is a meaningful statement. Right. Well,
and I could say I am a banana. And
that's meaningful. That's deep.
Well, it's rational, apparently. Lewis, I don't think that's a good definition for rational.
No, I would reject that definition.
Yeah, if you guys just let me talk for a second. So, like, if I say 2 + 2 = 4 equals 4, we say that's your brain is working okay, Lewis. And if I say 2 + 2 = chicken, and in my own head that makes perfect sense, and you guys are like, "Whoa, Lewis, what are you talking about? Like that makes no sense whatsoever." But in my own brain, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. If your brain doesn't work to that level, right? So, like, if logic doesn't work, if you're not rational.
You said that 2 + 2 = chicken is properly basic.
Well, remember what we're talking about here. I'm saying if your brain does not work, there's no way to prove that your brain works. That's a thing that we all have to assume. That's something we all have to just take for granted, that our brain works, and there's no non-circular way to prove it. If your brain doesn't work, as soon as you sit down trying to prove it, you're assuming your conclusion. It's a very, very important truth that we all accept, that there's zero proof for.
So let's apply this in a couple of places.
This feels like it's moving into solipsism, honestly.
Yeah. Now we can move back into ontological territory, right? You're talking about properly basic. Is it properly basic that all circles are round?
That's a definitional truth, right? Yes. So that's by definition, circles are round.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
So now let's apply that to your God, right? You're saying that it is properly basic, which means we should be assuming that God exists. Is that the same? I'm sorry, but I've heard the cookies in the pantry fallacy, which is, by the way, not a fallacy, but I've never seen it applied the opposite way.
So no, I would say it's more properly basic, more like you believe your own name, right? You don't need proof for that. And actually, you don't need proof for a lot of things that you go through life in, right? So, like,
for your name, what does that mean?
Right.
As someone who has changed their name, we both have changed our names. What do you mean?
Well, are you talking about just people's assumption? Like if I say my name is Eric and V says their name is V,
sure.
You just go, okay.
Right. So most of the things that you go through in life, like all the people you know, I don't know if you've ever seen Eric's birth certificate, if you know for a fact that his name is what his name is, right? So you believe that. Now, you would say it's not extraordinary, so you kind of trust him on it. But there's all sorts of things we go through life that we don't ever get proof on.
Is my soul in eternal jeopardy if Eric's name is not Eric Murphy?
Yeah, but okay, so let's take science, for example, right? So those are...
Hold on. We're moving to a different example, and we haven't actually fleshed out this one. And I think that...
Lewis, we need to be able to, like, I can sense that you're trying to talk about a lot of things very quickly. I want to talk about one or two things and get deep in here, okay? Because that's the only way we're going to start having a real back and forth. Otherwise, we're going to be jumping all over the place.
Yeah,
so
and I actually was trying to give an example to this point. I wasn't really changing the subject, but yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
So I want to go back to your grounding for properly basic beliefs. There are multiple kinds of grounding, right? We both know this. Do you know what Plantinga calls the proper, the okay grounding for the basic belief in God?
So, I don't know that I follow Plantinga on all things here, but I can tell you my personal view of what I think is...
It's just the most recent iteration. It's actually a very old idea. It goes back to Kant.
Sure. So
yeah.
my
I feel it.
View of what...
I feel it.
What constitutes...
It feels right. Therefore, it's properly basic. And it's frankly bullshit.
Can you say that again, V? V, can you say that again?
Yeah, sure. The justification for why I think that God is a properly basic belief, that grounding, Plantinga, Kant, everyone in between, I feel like it is. I have a deep conviction. My soul feels it. Therefore, it's real. And I'm sorry, that is not convincing to me.
I think he specifically called it the inner witness of the Holy Spirit.
The inner witness, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I think what he's speaking to there is what I was speaking to earlier, which is there is a knowledge that is unmistakable. So in other words, there's a knowledge that I have just from personal experience that I know isn't drugs, and I know is not what you're talking about with other interpretations of, brain function or whatever. Like I know what I saw, for lack of a better word, and it doesn't matter what other people think. It might be hard for me to personally explain. It might be unprovable. It might be something I can't prove to you, V, or you, Eric, but it's something that I personally know, right? It's something.
But that is not true of any other things that we assume are properly basic.
Okay, go ahead. Here's my problem, because we're going back to the beginning of this call now. We've gone from atheism is based in ignorance because you guys haven't read enough books to I know things because I felt it and I experienced it, and I know it's not provable and you don't have to believe it, but I know it's true.
No,
it does not. That does not follow.
No, yeah, that's not my argument. So my argument is a multi-pronged argument, right? And we're on the first point here, which is I don't think that the burden of proof necessarily lies on me, but I'm happy to prove my point, right? So that the first point, which is I believe I know what I know, right? So
hold on, really quick. I just want to make sure that I'm following too. Are we throwing out the properly basic claim because we're not agreeing on it? Are you moving to another thing?
No, I think absolutely there is a properly basic, but keep in mind what properly basic says. Properly basic is not. Let's go back to the tree example.
Properly basic is not necessarily true. We have other calls. I'm trying to put this in a nutshell. Something being properly basic does not necessarily mean it's true. Correct?
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you're saying that something that is not necessarily true is your evidence of something being true.
Not at all. No. So I'm saying that it's when something is properly basic, it shows the burden of proof doesn't lie on me, but it doesn't mean we can't disagree with it, right? So like if
doesn't mean I can't disagree.
Right, you can offer a defeater to their grounding, and they can offer a defeater to we know how that works. To me, it reads like tag, you're it. That's what that sounds like to me. Okay. So here's the thing, Lewis. We're going to move on to other calls. We have tons and tons of calls in the queue right now. I love that you called in. I want to talk more. I really, really do. You say you have a multi-pronged argument. Let's put the properly basic belief, either come back to that next week.
Like properly basic wasn't actually an argument. The consciousness, I think, is a giant thing. Like the fact that you guys...
All right. Lewis,
perfect.
Next week, let's talk about consciousness. Call in. I'm ready to continue this conversation.
Absolutely. Really quick. Hey, Lewis.
Yes.
Would you agree that we're well enough read to have this conversation?
I don't think, here's what I think and let's just to correct what I said. I think in my experience, many atheists are not well enough read. You guys sound like you are fairly well read. I don't know how well read you are, but I do think that in general, most atheists are atheists because they just have not seen the full spectrum of information out there. So but you guys sound like you have.
You know what? I'm okay with that. That is a step in the direction of not making huge assumptions and generalizations about groups of people, and I'm happy with that. And I think that if that's the only thing we take away from this call, then I think this was a valuable call.
Let's also take away the fact that Lewis fucking owned. He owned it. He called in.
Yeah,
he called in. You gave us an argument. We had an awesome conversation about properly basic beliefs. This was great. Other people, be like Lewis.
I appreciate the conversation. I definitely appreciate you guys having the conversation, and I will think about calling in next week. I don't know if I'll be able to or not, but I will certainly think about it. And I do think, obviously, I didn't get to any of the positive arguments for Christianity. We started off on kind of the foundational question
love those. Those are jammy jams, man. We're stoked about those. If you want to see more about properly basic beliefs, by the way, I did a 3-part series on properly basic. I sat down with Dr. Randall Rouser.
Yeah.
So look for Eric D. Murphy on YouTube and you should be able to pull it up.
All right. Sounds good. Hey, thank you.
Thank you, Lewis. Have a nice rest of your day.